to medium, I'll specifically talk about jumping from medium to medium because sometimes if you're filming a demo and you see all these products on the table and you think, ooh, this is cool, they don't all go together. So you don't use oxide with alcohol ink and all of that. But we'll break it down so you guys can really get what it's all about. We're going to start first, of course, with sprays. Because one of the cool things about working with Ranger is that there's a lot of different art mediums and really a lot of different delivery systems for a product. That's what it's all about. Something can start out as an ink pad and it can turn into things from paints to markers to crayons and in this case a spray. So I'll also talk about the Distress Oxide pads. I think one of the questions people have is what makes these sprays, these cool little oxide sprays, different than an ink pad? Well, the gist of it, the basics of it is the same. It is a dye pigment fusion. This is delivered in an ink pad, this is delivered in a spray bottle, but from a chemist's point of view, it's more complicated than that. You have to totally change the formulation for an ink to be delivered in a piece of felt versus something that you can spray. The result, though, is very, very cool. So I'm just going to take some paper, and you can work on really anything porous when it comes to working with distress. Everything from watercolor cardstock to mixed media heavy stock to kind of any kind of paper. You want to avoid plastics like UPO, right? UPO won't really work well with these kind of inks. They'll do their thing and then they'll wipe clean. But let's just take this down from an ink pad, right? So an ink pad is just going to give us that smush, that kind of basic thing. Or we can also go in and blend, whether it's with a blending tool or a blending brush. We can get kind of that soft, creamy look. And the thing about these inks is because it is a dye and pigment fusion, we get this really rich coloration, right? But the thing about working with an ink pad also is that we have the ability to stamp. So you can take any of your images, you can put it on your ink pad and you can stamp those crisp lines with an ink pad. You can't get that with something fluid, right? It's just going to be too liquid and just kind of too playful, if you will. If you have paper covered in oxide and you spray it, we're going to get some reaction. The thing about this is that this is going to start to oxidize as soon as it gets wet. We're going to see those water drops start to form, and that's because right now that dye and pigment is starting to separate. We can see those little outlines, and you see those little outlines around each dot. That's that dye and pigment separating. And then, of course, if we dry it, you'll really start seeing that oxidation occur. It kind of gets that light effect, if you will. And the thing about oxide is the more water you add, the more it will oxidize. So that's the gist of an ink pad. But when we deliver it in a spray bottle, totally different. And you'll see the difference. That's why I like to demo it that way. A couple of things to note with a spray. These guys need to be shaken up. If you see the kind of the side of the bottle, I'll show where the label connects, where they don't want you to see. They did their best to wrap it. I think it's important. People are like, this part is ugly, don't show them. Like, you need to see it. You can see down here, here is that pigment, and all the way up there is dye. So before you use this, you have to mix it up. You have to shake it. Now with the spray bottle, because it's got that opening, you know, we kind of say shake side to side just so you can swirl it. It's not because it's going to foam. It's not because it's going to do anything wrong. It's just because if you shake it up and down, some of that ink could leak out the neck of the bottle. I don't have time for that. So,
I thought it was because the mica will go into the
no, because
tube.
this isn't mica.
Oh, it's not mica.
No.
So that's why.
Oh, wow.
It's the
First
ink.
time I've seen them. We won't talk about that. We're talking about oxide sprays right now.
No distractions.
Totally wants to. Yeah, let
It
me
just
just
kind
check
of
some of
leaks
these
out when you're shaking it.
Oh,
See
okay.
how I know?
Yeah, I know. I tried to warn you.
You did.
I did. So what's really important, you can take a paper towel, some sort of cloth, that's the way I like to do it, and just cover the nozzle, and then you can just shake it out. Right?
Sweet.
Because this way, if any ink is going to go out, it's just going to get caught in the towel. These haven't been used yet, so I should be okay. But once I kind of prime the pump, that's when you have to worry about it.
Okay.
But you can see that they mix up really, really quick, right? You don't have to wait till all of that stuff is mixed in. It has a mixing ball. As long as you hear that shake around, you're ready to go. And every time you use it, it is a good idea just to give it a little shake. So once they're like mixed up, let's say you're working on a project and you shake them and you go from color to color, I would just do this. That's enough to kind of make sure that that dye and pigment is really floating around. That's what it's all about. So it's not so much a clogging issue. It's just the fact that when it comes to oxide, the beauty is that dye and pigment. So if you don't keep it mixed, you're going to end up getting either pigment or just dye. Make
Right,
sense?
makes sense.
All right, so let's talk about how it looks on a surface. Now I'm just going to work here on the media mat and kind of clear that area. So I'm just going to go in and spray it. You can see right away it's got beautiful coverage, beautiful opacity, almost like a spray paint. And when you layer a color on a color, so you can see cracked pistachio over Mermaid Lagoon, you can see that that green sits right on top of that blue. If these were just translucent dyes like our spray stain, we wouldn't see that color separation. We would have seen a new color, which would have been pretty. But the cool thing about working with a pigment spray now is that when we layer colors, you actually see that they're layered. We don't necessarily need to dry them in between, but you can, depending on what you're going for. So here I'm just going to dry this, just so you can see the spray as it is, because it's still going to be reactive with water. After all, it is an oxide. But just because it's reactive with water doesn't mean you always have to use it with water. That's the thing about Distress also. So you can see it gives it, I'm going to say kind of a chalky appearance, but it's really just that kind of oxidation. We don't have that reaction yet because we haven't added water, but you can see where we've sprayed it, how we have that different color blend, right? But when we add water, we're still going to get that blend. We're going to get everything that these do, but now we get to choose how we want that to happen and when. Now when we add big drips of water, you're going to see that dye and pigment separate even more than this, because the intensity of a spray, that's really why a lot of mixed media artists love spray. It gives it more intensity, more coverage, quicker, right? If we had to cover an entire journal page by using an ink pad and a blending tool, that's going to take a while. But because I can just spray this on now, we get a much more fluid nature of our colorants too. Just look at the difference side by side as far as that creamy blend, but also kind of that fluid nature. So is there an either or? No, and I think sometimes when we release new art meetings, people go, oh, I can have this instead of this. It's like, no, we never want to give you a product so you have this instead of this. We want to give you a product that says, here's another way to apply or deliver that medium, right? Now the thing about this stuff, of course, because it is a dye and pigment, it's a little bit messier to clean up. So you want to work on a media mat, a craft sheet, you can work with a splat box, you can clean that up. But the nice thing also is that we can also mix our mediums. That's what I'm going to share with you as well. It's always very cool when we have different products. Let's take some other colors. We'll take this, we'll take this. We can mix dyes, these are spray stains, with pigment and dye, which are oxide sprays, and we get something completely different. So this guy, now that I've already shaken it up officially, I can now just give it a little mix, and I can spray some of that color. Then I can go in with the spray stain. Now the spray stain, remember, this is just going to be just full-on dye.
That's fantastic.
And I'm just going to go in, because I've added dye and some pigment, and I can create a totally different background, right? So remember, this was a really bright color, but because I mixed it with a dye, it's completely altering my background. Now let me dry it, because that's when you see what's going on, what's happening. Trying to get out of camera view. It's tough to work. All right, now as I'm drying stuff, the thing about working with different fluid inks is you're always going to have what I call the sludge factor, right? You're going to have that on there. If it looks like sludge, it dries like sludge. So if you don't want it there, just tap that with something porous, and the color will just fill in the blanks. So here's what you're going to see happens when this dries. You're going to see that where I have that concentration of oxide, it's oxidizing, and where I just have the dye, it is translucent.
Wow.
Right?
It's turning blue again, too, kind of.
Because pigment always dominates dye. So it doesn't matter what you put on top of it, even if this dried and I put another layer of ink, that pigment is always going to rise to the top. Pigment dominates dye at all times.
He's a chemist.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a 5-year-old and I'm like, why is this happening? Tell me why. What if I did this? What about this? But you know, now I'm just one of those doers. I just do it and I try to figure it out myself. But having different mediums, and I think that's what's so exciting about educating people on inks, is that you think that you just need one thing and you're going to be good, but when you start playing around with what you already have, even if we went in and added a significant amount of water up here, we can get more of that color to go right down over that dye, and we can still get that dye to react. It's Distress after all. That's the beauty of Distress. Distress gets better with water. Most water-based inks, if you add a significant amount of water, your color starts to dissipate, right? Like a watercolor, right? We know if we want a lighter color, we just keep adding more water. Well, with Distress, if you keep adding more water, you're gonna get more color, right? Which is cool, because that's what I like about doing backgrounds. I like the fact that I don't have to use tons and tons of ink to get a beautiful background. I can play around simply by adding layers of water. But you can see that these sprays are just, they are ridiculous. So let's talk about some effects without you kind of seeing the same thing over and over. I'm just gonna leave this here. I'm gonna let that air dry just because I'm bored. Sometimes I just don't want to wait for it to dry. But I'm just going to show you some things that I showed during Facebook
fun.
Live. Obviously,
Fun.
oxide sprays are going to allow us to now put ink over darker surfaces, right? So we can spray it on craft paper, black cardstock, whatever, we get that opacity. You can spray a color of oxide, put a stencil down, and just start adding water over that stencil, and that area is going to continue to oxidize more than our background. So that's where it builds up that kind of white layer. Do you see that? Remember, every time I add water, it's just going to oxidize more and more. So just water through a stencil over your background is going to get this. But this one of my favorites. My background is all done with ink, right? So all of those translucent colors in the background, those are all done with either spray stain or ink pads, that translucent, rich color. Then I laid a stencil down and sprayed it with an oxide because pigment dominates dye. So now I'm able to put blue on top of red and orange and it's still blue. It doesn't turn brown, right? Because if this was just all translucent, it would turn a color. So let's talk about when we're working on different types of substrates. Okay. Oh my gosh, I got a lot of stuff in here.
It's really warm right here.
It's awesome. Okay. So if I have a collage surface, and we talked about this in class, this is just done with a layer of collage medium. If your collage medium has cured, when you go to put a product over the top of it, let's just say it's a spray stain or an oxide, the thing you have to remember is that this is supposed to seal that, okay? So it's going to be a creative dry erase board. But I found that if you work with this and you let your collage medium dry to the touch, but it's still a little porous, watch what happens. So I'm just going to start a collage from the get-go. It's hard to explain, right?
It is.
But
I
it has
got
to be
blank
dry.
question marks on their heads.
Yeah, it's like it has to be dry, but not fully dry. And like, so that to me is the difference between dried and cured. I think that was the best way I could
Yes.
describe it in class. It's like it's dry, but it's not cured. Because if it is cured, if it's overnight, then when I just wet this, that's what collage medium is supposed to do. It's just supposed to, I mean, it totally comes off, right? Because it can be used as a sealer. So here's what we're going to do. Let's grab some ephemera. There we go. Paper dolls.
Gosh, I've got to choose one.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
No, you can't. He's a big guy.
Listen to you, eh?
I know, they did. Which was good. Because it takes the fun out of it. If you spend all your time overthinking it, it really does just kind of take the fun out of it. It's giving something to sit on, because otherwise it'll just be a loader in there, and that's not going to be good. All right, we're going to do some collage medium. See where I took that last minute. It was nice organizing last minute. It did pretty good. These baskets, this last minute decision really worked out well. All right, I'm going to use just matte collage medium. I'll go with a small brush because nothing else is going to fit that big. I need a big jar of collage medium. Oh, there it is. Piece in there. These are cute, not functional, right? Not everything cute is functional, right? It's a good tester. It's a great thing if you have a customer that says, which one do I want to do? It's really great. Or really, if you teach classes, this is a great thing because you can refill it in class, because sometimes if you put this much in front of a student, they just think that's a portion size, right? Like, that's for one card.
It's like a Ben and Jerry card.
Exactly. So it's like, here you go. That's all the glue you need for this project. That's all you're going to get, and then you can fill them afterwards. But yeah. But if you can trust yourself, if you can glue responsibly, then crack into the big one. All right. So for this, when I work on the media mat, anytime I have something gunky or sticky, I like to just work on the craft mat portion of it, right? Because this is just going to peel up and allow me to clean it up much, much easier. But if you get something on your glass, you could, there's nothing wrong with going in and using alcohol or hand sanitizer. So I'm just going to take some collage medium, place this down. You get what you get, you don't throw a fit. I would normally use a paper towel, but I don't have one this morning. I'll get one. Put another layer on. See where he needs to go. It's a new brush. Probably use that little bristle as well. He's going to sit there.
If you're looking for the tricky tray area to exchange your voucher for the raffle tickets,
now we're going to paint on the top layer.
1334.
Now when you use collage medium, I like brush strokes. If you don't like brush strokes, you can go with your fingers and kind of smooth it out. But I like brush strokes, you can see. Because that's what brush strokes do. All those little jaggedy bits. All right.
Some amazing demonstrations.
Magically appear.
You just have that in your bag.
Have fun out there.
That's awesome. Thank
Be
you.
prepared.
That is cool. That is crazy cool.
Step to the rescue.
That's really good. Thank you. Because now I'm going to create my baby wipe for my brush. Want to get a baby wipe?
Yes, you
Oh my gosh. No. That's fine. Just any kind of moisture will keep your brush from drying out. I'll get
I have a
one.
baby wipe in my purse too.
Wow. See?
Probably because I'm a mom.
That's just, oh, there you go. That's
We're not.
That's all right.
Fast, fast.
All right, so here I'm just going to spray that with water. Cool thing just to note, if you are a maker or again, people are intimidated by mixed media, if you clean it up while it's wet, it's seconds. If you let everything dry, that's when you're scraping and eroding and doing all of those things. So water-based mediums, clean them up.
Is that just a bar towel that you use?
Yeah, this is just a flour sack towel that I buy at Walmart because it doesn't have any lint on it. So it's just great. You buy them like in a 4 or 5 pack, like restaurant towels you can get. Just something people say like a cloth diaper, anything that's just not going to put lint on your projects. It look like a chia pet if you use a terry cloth. Or maybe that's a new texture. Who knows? So collage medium could air dry, right? So just know what I'm showing you has nothing to do with heat. The heat is only speeding up the drying time. Okay, but we can just let this air dry if we want. So if you're working on several, go for it. And it just needs to be dry to the touch. It just needs to be that when you touch it, it's not wet. Okay? But this is not cured, but I can tell that it's completely dry. So let me take this, cut this off. All right, there we go. Instant collage with some bonus brush pieces. Okay, so let's talk about some colors. I know that we use this color. Nice spruce. Yeah, that's a good one. We can use a little brown, but I'll mix it up. I'll use some different colors.
So this is the new Distress Oxide.
We're going to work with some oxides.
spray.
Yeah, so we're just going to work with oxide sprays, and I'll talk a little bit about it when I go to spray this on. I just want to make sure this is mixed up. Oh, I have a paper towel now. So easier with a paper towel, guys, because you just need to spray, put it around the nozzle, shake it up. There was a little confusion in class yesterday when I said wrap the towel around the top and shake it. Some people actually removed the spray to do that.
Oh my God.
See? Consider that a win. Right. I consider that a win.
They got some really nice paper towels for collage.
Well, I did say remove the top, but I meant this. Some people meant like unscrew the whole sprayer, put the paper towel, and then just started shaking it.
thought you
They're
meant
this is not keeping it in.
cocktails,
I'm like,
okay,
no.
Tim?
So now I'll just say the clear top. That's my bad. The lid. See? The lid. You know, sometimes people take it a little bit more literal than you expect as a teacher, and that's, wow, thank you. Sometimes
they're
you
really
just,
listening.
you don't know. They were. Hey, listen. I have to say, my students yesterday, they rocked. It was such it was just such an awesome class. It was. Like everyone was just
Attentive, and you didn't go ahead of me.
no, it's
You waited.
and it's tough to do that in the morning. Sometimes people, not all dialed in.
You bring it out of us.
Yeah.
You bring it out of us.
All right, so when we're working with this, I'm just going to do just oxide sprays just to show you what this is going to do on there. So I'm just going to take some color. I'm just going to add some on there. Now remember when it comes to working with this, that as you go in and add color, one color is going to cover the next. So don't worry when you're adding colors to kind of muck it up a little bit because you don't know what's going to happen with the layers underneath. All right, so far we've got, well, a lot on there. This really in a perfect environment, going with other paper, right? If you do other classes, it's a good idea to kind of pick this up, set it aside, going with another piece of cardstock. Maybe you're just going to take a tag. Right. If you want your inks to blend right away on any paper, mist it first. Then when you go and do a drag, it's going to act as a watercolor wash. If you go in with dry paper, it's going to print. Does that make sense? Right, so if I went dry paper and did that, it's going to have this harsh line. This is now to create more of a fluid wash of color. And backgrounds are good because, well, they're backgrounds. You never really know what you're going to get. But that's another nice thing that, I really love working on a media mat because I love the fact that the glass is just completely slick, right? It doesn't have any of that porous nature. So this is really good for gluing and sticky messes and things like that. But when it comes to having inks move, and glass is, in my opinion, it's just the right.
Are you thinking of doing it in white?
Not in white, just because because Tonic does have a white glass mat. So if you want that, you can get it now. Tonic has, it's not a media mat, but it's a glass cutting mat in white. I just found that as much as I work, this is more restful to the eye, and this also, believe it or not, makes your colors pop out more than a white surface, especially when you keep working and working. And if you're doing a lot of detail work and you're staring at this, just to me, I found that it was much more relaxing. So that's why I said, oh, hey, I wanted to go in with black. So now we got this guy. Now this could dry, this could air dry. You could also speed it up. So again, heat is not a factor for the process. But what's happening is you can see that even though we were spraying all of that muck, as it starts to soak in, you can see those colors start to kind of do their thing. You can see where there was more green or more blue or more brown. So it's very, very interesting when it comes to working with this. Now our paper here, if we want to get some of that color off, we want to get this off before it dries completely. Okay, because that's collage medium. Because if you don't, this is going to take on some color like our background. Okay, makes sense? So if I want some of this to kind of come off here before I totally dry this, I'm just going to want to wipe some of that off. Okay. Now let's go in.
That's cool. So you don't have to mask the image and go to all that effort.
No,
You
but
just
that
have
is
to wipe
because
it
we
off.
use collage medium, right? So once collage medium is over something, it does technically seal it. But this one is different than this one because this was days ago. This, we just did it right now. So as this ink dries, whether it dries by air or heat, you're gonna see that there's gonna be some separation. Not full, but some separation that goes under the mediums, which I really love. Because this creates, I think, such a cool background. So now I'm just gonna go in with the towel. I'm just gonna start to reveal some of the stuff under there. Okay? And you'll see that as I lift this, a lot of that dye is actually under the surface. So really all I'm wiping off is kind of that oxidized layer, and all that color under there is the dye that's separating in the spray. Now the nice thing about working with this is you don't have to just settle, right? We can go in and we can add different types of colorants. If we wanted to add, let's just take a little purple because hey, there's no purple and green. Okay? We can add some ink in there, and that ink is going to mix in with some of that oxide. It's not going to quite oxidize, but it is going to allow us to add that tone, that tint. And the reason we're able to work with this layer is because our collage medium is not cured.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you said, it's that in between. It's the fact that I don't have to mask anything, but I'm still getting that playtime of putting color on and lifting color off before it all absorbs. Because if this didn't have collage medium and you were spraying all of those inks, it would look like paintball. Wherever you sprayed, like you just go right into the paper, right? It wouldn't give us that playtime. So it's just something that I discovered, actually. It wasn't something, I can't say that I designed it that way, because I didn't. It was just when I was working with the sprays, I knew that, you know, when you put it on paper, it goes in there. But over a collage, I wanted a little bit more movement. And I'm really pleased at just kind of that overall effect. And it's still going to be reactive with water, so we can still go in and add some of that water. You'll see it break apart a little bit more. But the more color you add over the top of it, the more it's going to stain through that paper. This is a cool background. I love that.
That is
because
really
what
cool.
I like about oxide sprays as well is it does provide a little bit more softness, if you will, right? Because let's face it, when you have dyes, that'd be this one, the background of this one is dye with a little bit of oxide spray, completely different effect. So you kind of have to play around.
And the water doesn't bring the collage medium down, like it's still sticky then, so it doesn't fall, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's because it's a water-based, waterproof. So once it was dry to the touch, water can't clean it off.
Make it fall
No,
off.
it's done. Yeah, it's very cool. I love that back. And I would still stamp on that. I could do another collage layer if I wanted to. See, look at that. Look at that. Look at that cleanup. I have not, but I bet it would be really cool.
Well, the distress inks work really, and the oxides work really good on
And
the.
people are saying alcohol inks are working great.
Yes.
On. So,
Can I see the one you just did?
it's kind of crazy, right? Oops, sorry.
Don't use a stick. Bye.
Yeah. But that could be color too. That's cool. All right, so next up, any questions about oxide sprays? I know there's a million and one things that I'll continue to demo throughout the show, but the gist of it, you guys get it, sprayable, dye pigment, cool. Because there's a lot of other stuff. Next, we're going to talk about archival inks, which really simple. Ranger has had archival ink in their line for many, many years. It is their permanent ink. It is an oil-based ink that is designed for stamping. And honestly, as many years as I've designed for them, I've always wanted distress colors in this archival formulation. Because it's waterproof, it's going to allow me to stamp before or after. It does a lot of very unique things that a traditional ink pad doesn't do. When it's oil-based, it can sit on a variety of surfaces. It can sit on glossy cardstock, it can sit on watercolor cardstock, and they're sold in mini ink pads in sets of 4. You've got warm, cool, and dirty. Okay? I love that vintage set. Now, this dirty set, these are the colors that are in that large 4-cell pad, that if anyone's tried to use that large ink pad, it's not easy unless you have baby little stamps that you're using. So the fact that we have this, really exciting. It does fit in the archival tin. It's similar design to the mini ink pad storage with that little divider on the bottom. But let's show just through the colors. Here, all I did, and I would encourage that anyone that runs a blog that wants to show the difference or that has a store, this is Distress ink, and this is Distress in archival. Okay, so archival is the brand, Distress is the color. So they have a lot of other archivals. Wendy's got colors of archival, Ranger has color. It's the formulation. But you can see that when I stamped both and sprayed it with water, one was very reactive with water. That would be Distress ink. The other, completely waterproof. That would be archival. Right? So the thing to know about this is that if you want a great stamping ink, you can stamp this over really any substrate. You can stamp it on glossy paper, you can stamp it on the new hardcore panels. That's archival over the top of it. And it's just a nice, crisp, detailed ink. But you can do some cool stuff with Distress. You're welcome to, if you're taking video, you can fan through the colors, look at it. But this is really a great one. People go, well, what's the difference? It's like, well, here's that color in Distress ink, here's that color in archival, hit it with water, and one is going to go crazy, and the other one's just going to hang out. Yeah. So let's show on a piece of cardstock. I'm just going to show you coated. Yeah, I'm just going to show on coated on glossy cardstock, which is pretty awesome. All right, clean this up. Just a little bit of haze on there. My splat box is literally right there, but like most makers, I would have to get it. So I would rather just not, because that's what we are. All right, going to take a piece of alcohol ink cardstock. This is just a glossy paper, it's a coated paper. The reason I like to show this on glossy is a lot of people think that when it comes to glossy cardstock, even though it's called alcohol ink cardstock, you can only use it with alcohol ink. No, it's actually the most porous of any of our papers. Okay?
Really?
So it's going to grab whatever medium we give it. So let's find a stamp. Oh, I just happen to have this guy. Distinguished.
Oh, somebody's asking on my what's the difference between Distress archival and regular archival ink?
Distress colors. It's only a palette.
Oh, okay.
It's just the palette. It's the only difference.
Okay.
And then where I put my gloves. Ben, where did I put my stamping gloves? Do you know?
They were still in the pack last night.
You never know what you're
got
going to
hooked
need.
on the edge
You
there.
never know what you're going to need. Oh, I'll need that too. I'll take these vinyl. All right. Let's move this over here. It doesn't, see, I am like every other maker. It doesn't matter how large of a space you have, you will work in this much. It's the truth. Story of our lives, right? Because you get here like, look at this demo table. Okay, but I'm gonna utilize my medium mat as real estate. That's what I always say. Consider this your safe space. Getting off your medium mat, because then you have a space to work. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some images and I'll stamp them in some different colors of Distress archival. When you work with archival ink, because it is oil-based, you definitely want a cleaner if you are a stamp cleaner. Okay. The only time I clean my stamps is if I'm going to use lift ink. Right? If I need a clean stamp, other than that, just wipe and go. That's it. All right, so let's take a color. I love the fact that it has a nice firm felt, but it's still raised off of the case. You can see that. That you still have a raised ink pad, so that's just going to allow it to hit the high points. We'll just go in. We're going to just do some stamping. Okay. Let me clean my stamp. Okay, that's it. That's clean. All right, now we'll take. I see. I just threw stuff over there. I will take this guy. This is kind of like that Dapper. See, look at that, Zoe. Look at that, Zoe. All
My favorite.
Yeah, so see, we can just take a hat. I mean, the cool thing about Distinguished is you have all these different hats and collars, and you can just create some really awesome effects. This one I think I'll go with Vintage Photo. Shocking. No, actually I won't.
Shocking.
Don't be predictable.
No.
We're gonna go in with blue. Going with the Little Mermaid Lagoon. That's going with some peeled paint. And because it's oil-based, you do have a really nice open time when it comes to stamping. It's not going to dry right away on your stamp the way a solvent ink would. So let's just kind of offset this one. Okay.
Oh, so vibrant.
I'm just going to clean this off. Yes.
That's very
Nice
vibrant.
colors. Peeled paint.
Seems like it
Having
should
the
have a
thick raspberry,
smell, like a
lemon
blueberry.
lagoon. Ranger used to do that. It sounds good in your head.
I know, it
It's
doesn't
not a
ever
good
work
idea.
out that
No,
well.
they used to have a whole entire line of vintage ink pads that were scented. Remember those?
Yes.
One was good. Multiple
I mean, exactly.
horrible. You know, 'cause like blue was baby powder, and then red was watermelon, and brown was root beer.
Oh,
so
gross.
imagine all three of those on one
Combined,
card.
it doesn't.
That's gross.
It's like bad jelly bellies.
Disgusting. It was like a bad joke. So in your head, you're like,
Harry
oh,
Potter.
it smells,
Yes.
it smells good. You're like, oh, it smells so good. It's like, one of them would, yeah. Then one of them, you're like, ooh, that smells
It's like
like
an
good
80s
watermelon.
mentality. Sorry.
No, fine. All right, so now we're just going to do one of the color, and you can just go in and do a lot of different collage elements. I think that's what makes it really fun. This could be the head, right? It is sized to be the head, but again, predictable. And let's see. The scripty stuff. Oh yeah, here's a good one. So let's just take that. We'll take this gear one, and we will use it.
Is that one of your ones?
Yes.
It's beautiful.
New inventor. That's good. I'm just gonna ink this up. I don't know what I'm gonna use of it yet. So sometimes when you have a big background stamp, just don't think that you have to use it as such, right? You can just go in and just use parts and pieces. You fragment it. If it's not on a block, it's just going to allow you, I think, a little bit more creative freedom to use parts and pieces. All right, good. Clean that off. Carefully put it back. Okay.
Somebody's like, can you say hello to Shannon?
Hello,
She would
Shannon.
freak out.
Don't freak out though. Remain seated for the demo portion. Okay. So once we have some color on the background, there's a couple of things that can happen. If I keep going with archival, right, that's just going to continue to layer it. The nice thing about these colors, as you can see, they're rich, they're vibrant. But when we're working with other ink mediums, much as I stayed here last night, and I was here last night setting up. Good night, everybody. Alright. I'm just gonna take, because I don't, well, let's just see if Ranger did this. Oh, but close, they tried. I'll give him
A
a
for
fair
effort.
point. Yep. So if you take that blending foam and you tuck it under there, that's really, really nice. I'm just gonna go in with Distress ink right now.
That's so smart.
And I'm going to take that ink and I'm going to start just going over this cardstock. And here's where it's very cool. Archival ink is oil-based. Distress ink is water-based. And oil and water
Don't mix.
don't mix. So by stamping an ink on, oh, that was nice. Let's rip that one off. By stamping that ink on a coated surface, okay, it's working because it's coated. It wouldn't do this on watercolor cardstock, okay? It would still be permanent, but you're not going to get this cool resist factor on watercolor cardstock. By mixing those two mediums, it's quite fun because you can get some really unique effects on your blends. Oh, have it. I'm going to have to flip all these. Could you go in with a spray? Absolutely. Do you have to blend this? Nope. You could use a Distress spray stain. Now, if you used Oxide, Oxide has that pigment in it. Pigment is going to dominate dye. So if you went in with Oxide, you would start covering this. So this is all an ink-to-ink thing. But I like to show this technique because it is quite cool when you're working with colors, especially if you were a fan of brown, as I am. This is really nice because I can take brown Distress ink and go over colors of archival ink. I blame this on every person that ever emailed Ranger that the lids for the minis were too loose. I blame every single one of them because I loved them when they first came out and I could just pick it up and they would fall off because as you can see I want to use them. And And everyone's like, the mates fall off, you need to make them tighter. And now they make them tighter, so now I have to stop,
Yeah.
two-hand process.
Yeah. I don't get to use my washi.
Our fault, huh?
Because the emails and stuff, they're like, Tim, we...
That's
Yeah,
what
they're like-
washi is for.
Yeah, they're like, Tim, we... Yeah, they're like, Tim, we have to make it tighter. Everybody wants them tighter. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. See, you do. You have to stop what you're doing. It's like, but now there you go. You're not gonna go anywhere. Oh boy. It's the truth. Anyone that has the original set, you know just what I'm talking about. You can pretty much look at that and the lid would fall off. But if it was in the tin, it wasn't going anywhere.
I'm still bitter over it.
When will they be
Very
available? People are asking.
When will what be available?
Or
The archivals? February.
February.
Yes, yes.
So the archivals come out in February?
Yeah, all of the new come out in February. The new
Okay.
archivals, the oxide spray, and then I'm going to get to alcohol pearls too.
I know.
Really cool. So I like to show this because as a stamper, you know, sometimes you're just thinking, do I really need a lot of colors? I mean, I'm going to be honest. When I do a lot of mixed media collage, I'm stamping in black or brown, right? I don't really tend to go to a lot of different colors of permanent ink. But if you like to do some cool, funky backgrounds, there is something to be said about having a variety of colors of ink. Because you can see just on this background right now, by adding those colors, we're getting this kind of crazy effect. Now, itself was Distress. We know about Distress that it is reactive with water. So if I just go in,
Killing
just
me.
add
So
just a
good.
couple little spritzes of water, I can easily create like a simple
Get
washed
out.
background, right? My ink, my stamp image is never going to go anywhere. But my Distress ink that I've done is. Now the thing about Distress ink, the longer it sits there, the more it's going to go through. So let's just say I had a little bit of water there. Let's just say we dried it. It sat there a while. It's really just going to lighten up. Look at that.
Wow.
So when you heat it, that's what's going to go under the surface. Just a simple effect. Completely smooth. I would still use that as a background. I would still stamp a focal image, text, or something in black, right? Because that's just a background. It's random. That's why my images, I wasn't really concerned of where that's going to go. It's still a background that I can put something on the top of. Yeah, I'll pass it over. So that is archival. I mean, really, it's just the same archival ink, but
Just
in
the
colors
colors.
that work great with.
Have you thought of the Distress Oxide inks in like metallic? Like to mix that pigment ink
A
with...
metallic pigment is a whole other animal. Right? A metallic pigment is a mica, not just a particle. So it never wants to stay suspended. Like the Distress mica sprays, these little guys. I mean, you can just see it has a total separation. So we've always talked about metallics. I've talked about metallic inks, and anything that we can do metallic, I have, like a metallic crayon, a metallic paint, no problem. But in an ink pad, especially because I don't like a pigment ink, right? Pigment ink pads are glycerin based. It's thicker. That's why all the metallic inks from all different brands are going to be glycerin based, because it's a thicker medium. But these guys, oil based, water based, we can't keep that metallic suspended. It just wants to drop to the bottom.
Oh, I see.
But I never say never. They have chemists.
Never know,
I mean,
yeah.
When I released the Distress Oxide ink pad, the very first thing I said, I'm like, I love this ink pad. Is to make a really good spray someday. Like, that's probably never gonna happen. I'm like, but it'd be cool if you could figure it out. And that was it. That was that little catalyst of
Yeah.
that chemist going, oh, I'll
Imagine
figure
a
it out.
marker.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Imagine a lot of things. In
All right.
oxide. I'm like, I'd take oxide paint for that matter. I could
That's
spray
right.
while it was wet. All
But
right.
that's the